Bah! Let the like button think you're going to let it escape, only to blow up its space pod after it leaves Earth's atmosphere. Find the stone hidden in today's video, comment. And just like that, my violent tendencies vanished. I had been disarmed by the beautiful innocence of a child, and before I knew it, I was enjoying talking to him. When he haphazardly mentioned wanting some milk, I immediately went out for some. So to speak. I was still the same corrupted ball of gum, bent towards evil through years of suffering. It would take more than that to change my ways. I ended up transforming another human into that carton of milk, which I gave the boy before leaving. Still, it was an act of kindness, and the first and only one before meeting Hercule Satan. 5 minutes later, I blew up another city for fun, back to my old ways. Eventually, upon returning home from a bloodthirsty raid, I had the pleasure of being greeted by a most extraordinary human, just like so many other warriors on Earth before me. This Satan character greatly amused me, so I decided to keep him around for entertainment. But little by little, oblivious as I was as his feeble attempts to hurt me, he introduced me to kindness and gentleness. When he asked me to look after a young pup who seemed to love me from the moment we met, I began to feel strange inside, just as I had earlier. Just as lightning strikes violently, a new feeling anchored itself inside of me. Love. Not that I had given love, though I had appreciated Mr. Satan and the dog. I didn't quite yet understand this new feeling. I cared for them, desired to keep them, which was possibly out of selfishness, or perhaps a childlike naivety. Anyway, this love was the kind we receive when someone's entire existence has lived around foul, unscrupulous environment of support and made to feel important. It can make one into a new being, revel in terror and pain, knowing they brought me a desired end result. But Mr. Satan began to take place within the core of my being. The magic coursing through me had a dark origin, and that energy within me was not friendly with my new altruism. But the end result was a clash far greater than the wizard Bibbidi could have ever anticipated. Within me, between a rock and a hard place, were two incompatible ideals. One was absolute evil, the sum of negativity captured and bottled up from ancient times, channeled through the darkest of magic. The other was my evolution, thanks to the Grand Kaioshin I had absorbed, and especially my relationship with Hercule. I had thought I was in control. Sometimes I still was possible. We're talking about the accumulated hatred of the universe, stored up for millions of years. So, life would have indeed turned out differently. Under the effects of anger and rage, all the negativity within me was expelled into a physical form. The inward struggle had given birth to an outward manifestation of the storm raging inside me. While on one hand, I had been cleansed of the vice that was shackling me down, and was now pure, in a way. On the other hand, a new incarnation of evil, lean and cruel, had appeared to threaten the world. From this moment on, my story becomes a bit more complicated to tell. You see, I was actually two different individuals, one and the same yet quite autonomous, if you understand my meaning. What I can tell you is it was now a battle of good versus evil. Of course, these notions are superfluous to me now, as I far transcend such primitive concepts of abstract morality. But on that day, evil prevailed. Thus was birthed the foundation of the humble deity who speaks to you now. A being of pure malice, seasoned in battle, willing to do anything for a good fight, and be the ultimate survivor of a merciless conflict. And so the normal events happen. You're familiar with most of this, I assume. So far, I've recited to you several scenes of my time on Earth. First, my life as a childish fatty, my feelings, and my rebirth as the divine being that I am today. Finally, we come to the absorptions. To be honest, I read your comments. Oh, humans of this normal reality, though I do like cookies. But I digress to focus back on your boring reality. You seriously haven't met any aliens yet? In my universe, there are hundreds of millions. Don't listen to the Kaioshins and Super, blindly stammering about there are only 30 inhabited planets. Try adding 10 zeros to that. Rest assured, very few of you actually deserve to become my hearty dinner. But, that being said, don't rest on your laurels. If you want to be worthy of joining me through absorption, put all your past, an eternity. I spent millions of times longer being imprisoned than I slept, prostrate on myself. It's not a dirty word, look it up. All I could do during those millennia was wriggle in my cocoon, changing the shape of my body to better rest, stretch, and sleep. Again and again and again and again, in a loop that never ended. Over time, even my energy had wilted. I was no longer the powerful monster I was upon my birth. I felt weak and miserable. Nothing remained of Majin Buu but a shapeless mass of pink jelly. And I cried. Alone. Again and all. Vigor and new life injected into me, rejuvenating even the last of my cells, exhilarating me in glorious euphoria. I became smoke, occupying the space at least inside my ball, while intense energy fed me and brought me warmth and life. I quickly stored the power of the pure-hearted fighters, whose energy had been gifted to me. What amazing power it was! In the span of a few brief power level. If I had been released earlier, I certainly would not have survived. Loneliness had sapped more than my strength, but my very Genki, an abandoned child world again. However, back to the topic of my abilities. At sake of being free again, once freed from the ball, still in vapor form, I took in the smell of the air, the sensation of wind caressing me. The cool breeze. I had recognized one of the individuals below. His body and face were familiar, like the one who had caged me. That miserable sorcerer I used to trust. My resentable. But this insect bought himself some time with his threats. A reminder of the spell to seal me back up, letting my childlike instincts free. I momentarily turned my attention to the powerful fighters nearby. I fought off a demon named Dabura, or Dabra, or Dabura, I can't really remember his name. That one would end up becoming my greatest of rivals, the most valorous. So I had thought. The Prince of Saiyans, Vegeta. The man spat insults at me like I was a dog. And ignorant as I was, Babidi had to explain this to me. Then, I went into a rage and blew up everything for at least a mile in every direction. Still far from my full strength, this yellow-head vermin was apparently no different from the rest. Covered in blood and barely standing. As I recount for you these events, understand that a great deal of importance lies with each of